Hello my friends, it's Ranger Russ from the Meggs Point Nature Center doing a special Saturday program today. But before we get into that, I want to let everybody know last night was the first of our lecture series, Friday night lecture series that we're doing every Friday at 6:30 for this month. We're going to have a special program. So you can see that program on Facebook Live. It's also, I believe, on YouTube, and it will be eventually on the website. So make sure you check in and see those events. So today we're here because we're going to be talking with a couple of our gardeners about the damage that the hurricane caused. So we did have some limbs and some trees blown down here at Hammonasset, but aside from that, there was some other damage. When I was here the day of the storm, the wind was blowing so strongly across here. Actually, I had trouble walking to my car. The wind was completely horizontal. The rain was horizontal. And it was also blowing salt. All the way from the sound, salt was being blown across here by some extremely high winds. I would guess they were 50-mile-an-hour winds, maybe more. But I don't know if you can see in this tree, the far side of this tree has some damage. I'm going to flip the camera around and we're going to look at this tree, and here we have Bob. And last week, we did 2 garden tours of this garden, and you're going to see, if you can go back and look at those, and again they are or will be on the virtual learning center at meggspointnaturecenter.org, you will see the extreme difference between the gardens then and the gardens now. So Bob, let's start out, let's talk about this tree. And we have Maureen as well. She can give us more information as we go.
So you can see this is the wind and salt damage. I mean, it's been dry this summer to begin with, so the trees were already a bit stressed. We were hoping we'd get some rain out of the tropical storm, but we maybe got less than 1/4 of an inch here. But you can see there's very little bit left of the chlorophyll. It's green along the mid veins here. And these leaves might actually drop off because of the stress. I mean, the chlorophyll probably was killed. A lot of cells can't tolerate the salt. You know, it dries things out even more than it was before. So we might not have much fall color this year. This tree in particular doesn't have much fall color to begin with, but maybe the leaves will drop off in the next couple weeks. There are buds already here for next spring, but those aren't going to pop out and open until next spring. So a lot of damage to some of these trees and shrubs and perennials. Maybe the leaves will completely fall off. They'll drop to the ground, and if we get a bit of rain, maybe the trees and shrubs will send out another set of leaves, but you know, it's late in the summer. They may not.
Yeah, it is late in the year for a recovery. Now, we can look at some of the other plants here.
Right, this other shrub is a lilac, and it's been here probably a good 20 years. And so it's probably gone through a few, not necessarily hurricanes, but you know, some good salt treatments from high winds, even in the wintertime. You know, you get some of the wind off the west here. But these are worse than the linden tree. I don't see any green.
There's a little bit of green on the back side there, a few green leaves. Now, will the green leaves fall off as well? Was there that much stress to the entire plant, or is it just going to be the leaves that were browned?
I would say within 2 weeks we'll have that answer.
Okay,
You know?
so we'll have to do another tour in a couple of weeks and see how the garden recovers, and we can talk about that.
Right.
So you mentioned that the chlorophyll is not there anymore. how is the chlorophyll removed by the salt spray or the wind?
Well, the salt makes some of the cells actually burst because they're trying to balance. They don't have salt in high concentrations, so they're trying to neutralize it, dilute it, and so they send out their water, and then the cells collapse and actually die. So it's desiccation.
Okay. The leaves are just being dried right up.
Yeah.
One of the things we're wondering is because the next thing to bloom would have been the goldenrod. So what do you think? We got a shot?
Well, those, they look like the flowers are wilted already.
Yeah.
We may not.
Right.
You know.
So that's going to be interesting because we have succession of bloom so that things can be there for the pollinators all the way through. So the things that we were counting on now for the birds that are getting ready to go and the butterflies may not be there for them. So it's going to be an interesting couple of weeks.
So yeah, you bring a really good point about food chains and food webs, is that with a successional bloom we constantly have something for pollinators and birds. Something is either flowering or in seed, and now we've put a pause right there, right in that food chain.
Yep.
And the effects are going to be felt right up the food chain. So the first ones that are going to be affected will be the insect pollinators and then the birds that eat the seeds, but then the things that prey on those will be affected. So this, few hours of salt spray, which is all it really was, it didn't last, the salt hitting these did not last very long, but those few hours can entirely disrupt the food chain.
Effect. Yep.
Yep.
And so the more protected areas that were farther away, you'll see a gradation of the salt, as you get farther inland. Maybe those birds and insects, if they can fly far enough to what didn't get damaged, maybe that's what they'll have to do, migrate a little bit.
Now, I'm noticing in the garden, the aquatic plants do not look very browned at all. Could that be because they're aquatic and they have so much more water in the leaves?
And they had access to the water too, as well.
So they were able to take up and exchange and keep their chlorophyll.
Right.
Even some milkweed on the backside there looks like it's still green. Well, let's continue around and see if we can find other ones that were resistant to the salt spray.
The sedum has done well.
Ah, there we go.
And they have a waxy coating to their leaves anyway, so they're going to resist drying out just from drought conditions. So they're evolved to be able to survive without water, and that helps them with salinization that the storm brought.
So you can see the brown on each side, and this one plant right there in the middle of it just was able to resist. And there's some more deeper in. We do have some lilies here. These are lilies, right?
Yeah, daylilies.
Daylilies are flowering.
So even this maybe bit of protection here, this caught it, but these didn't.
Right.
So microhabitats are going to show up, micro effects of the salt.
So the outer edge obviously was affected more, and then you move one plant over, and hardly any sign of the salt damage here.
I would say, Russ, maybe plants that had a lot of hairiness to them would have suspended the salt away from the main body of the leaves, so that might be protection as well.
So a waxy coating or a leaf that has some texture to it so the salt isn't directly coming in contact with the chlorophyll cells may have helped protect some of these. So even our evergreen here is browning up a little bit. But
And
again,
even being a needle, that's an advantage because there's less exposure because they're not as broad as a maple leaf or an oak leaf. But still, there's enough salt that
yep.
it's done some damage.
But if we look under in the shade garden, it looks like all of those plants, they don't even look like
No,
there's
all the
anything
ferns are
left
pretty
of
hit.
those.
They all, as you go down that, you'll see that most of the ferns really are pretty crushed. And they're low, and they had some protection, but they definitely, and it might be also because they're delicate, so it's going to be interesting to see how they rebound.
So the delicate plants that are not sun tolerant at all
Yeah.
really didn't like this salt spray. Let's continue down. We can see, again, you can see the line on this shrub back here. Green there, right to the other side is brown. So that's the wind and the rain. So you can see some footage from the hurricane, was it actually a hurricane? Tropical storm. I filmed from the back window here of the Nature Center. Let's pan over here and show you. So from those back windows, I was able to film a couple of spots. And I was filming out and on the road. So you see the far tree there right next to the road? That whole backside of that tree, the road was completely dry. So we were not getting a whole lot of rain. It was a lot of salt spray from the ocean. And you can watch those videos. Those videos, again, will be on the website and on YouTube. All right, so let's continue around. A lot of, again, brown on only one side of the plant. So if one side of the plant is wiped out, all the leaves are browned, they're going to fall off. Is half of a plant enough to sustain the plant's growth?
I'm nodding my head, yes. Because, some of it will come back in the spring.
Okay.
It's almost like that part of the plant's going to go dormant for the rest of the growing season.
Another good example is the penstemon, because if you look, you can see that down below here, it's already coming back. So we can probably cut this all back and then just let this come up in the spring.
So by removing the things that are dead, you can direct more energy to the living things and you may get the plant
Right.
to recover faster. Now, if we got an immediate rain after, would that have helped? If we were able to get some
Yeah.
water on these?
Yes.
Fresh
yes,
water?
Yep. But you don't know if you're going to put enough water on. We probably could have used 3 or 4 inches of rain, equivalent, with a hose to get that.
That's a lot of hosing,
I tried that
hosing down.
in 1985 when we had Hurricane Gloria. I soaked my garden for hours, and I lost all my plants.
It didn't work. Okay.
But they were newly established plants.
So we've got now, if you remember from our video, one of my favorite plants, the cardinal flower, it looks like the wind actually knocked some plants down over here. You can see there's some cardinal flower broken off. The leaves look fine, the flowers are, but these are just going by, right?
Yeah.
These weren't just wiped out by the storm.
The top of this might still be okay.
So we might still get some flowering from the cardinal
Yeah.
flower, but
The
shad bush over here,
That's got to be
that's broken right off.
Yep.
It looks like it already had some, you call them sappers? I always call those sappers coming out of the trunk there.
Oh, water
Yeah.
shoots.
Yep. So if you cut that off, will we be able to get that to grow into a shad
Yeah,
bush?
Yep.
It won't be the same, obviously.
No, it won't have the same shape.
Yep.
But there's enough roots in the ground and probably enough reserves that they can flush back.
All right, let's
Take a look at the.
let's take a look at the coastal garden. Now, this garden was designed with plants that you would find on the coast of Connecticut. So you would think that these plants will have more of a resistance or more of an ability to come back. Would that be correct?
Yeah, for instance, the seaside goldenrod hardly shows any impact from the salt. You know, it looks just like the wind has pushed them a bit, but you know, they grow right in the sand on the dunes. So they're
We looked at another goldenrod up top. That was
probably an upland goldenrod. But these are on the dunes, so
Yeah.
you know, they have. I mentioned the waxy leaf. I mean, I barely see any browning, and this could be from drought and not from the storm.
Yeah, we have had a pretty dry year, so that probably didn't help these plants at all. The fact that they didn't have the moisture that they normally
Right.
would have.
If they were fully hydrated, you know, doctors always tell us to be fully hydrated.
And what we have here, this one doesn't look like it sustained the weather very well at all.
Yeah, we'll have to wait about a month and
That's,
see.
yeah, that's a 9 bark, which is supposed to be indestructible. So we're going to see how it does. And the senna also is supposed to be extremely hardy, and they're both took quite a hit.
Yeah. So we'll definitely have to do this again as soon as we start to see some change. Maybe in 2 weeks or a month, we can come back and revisit this and see what it does. But it's really interesting. We were talking before about what this may look like next year. It may take that long, and we may see some things that don't recover at all. So it's going to be interesting to see. And this was just the first storm of the year, and they're predicting a lot of storms this year. So we'll have to see what this garden, the resistance and capabilities. But being a native coastal garden, there is advantage to that, right? You want to tell some of the advantages of the fact that it's native and a coastal garden?
Well, you know, a native plant has had plenty of storms genetically to go through in the last 10,000 years. So the ones that were more tolerant are the ones that survived. So we're here, really, Meg's Point is a projection out into Long Island Sound, so it's vulnerable just because of its geographic location. So the plants that should be here have had time to evolve and adapt to the most rigorous conditions. You know, like the seaside goldenrod, it's probably had 10,000 years to work on getting the waxy leaves developed, and those are the ones that survived. Being that they're native certainly is a leg up. You know, they're adjusted to all the other conditions of weather, not just the salt and the soil and moisture conditions here.
A good example of one of the gardens that did very well in this is the mini meadow, which is all natives also, but that's been around for, this is its 5th year. So it survived very well with very minimal damage. Probably it's a little bit sheltered, but also because it's very packed.
I was going to say, also, yeah, it is a little bit protected. Let's
Yeah.
go up and take a look at the mini meadow.
Plants that are on an edge or exposed are going to be more vulnerable. If they're in a group or a cluster or a mass, you know, the numbers help to make it more tolerant as a group. You might lose some individuals on the edge, but the main body of the plants will survive.
I don't know if everyone can see, but I'm noticing a lot of the plants are all laying down away in the direction that the wind was blowing, away from that wind. So We've got,
Spiral garden, Russ, looks pretty good because it's about 2 feet lower here than the rest of the garden, and they're pretty green.
so we're going to go back here around and see the spiral garden, which did not take a whole lot of damage.
They probably had some protection from the butterfly bush right here.
There's some cover here, and here we have the cover. The butterfly bush looks like it's blown over and a little beat up. Oh, we've got a monarch. Very cool. And then over here we've got the mini meadow. So it does look like a lot of the plants are mashed and pushed down, but they're still very green. There's a monarch. Still a lot of green.
A lower layer in the garden. The lilacs probably took more of a hit in that direction, and then just a bit down from the pond, you know, we've got about a foot lower here. That helped. So I was talking about micro habitat. We'll see that impact, you know, in a couple weeks or a month for sure.
Yep. I do see a lot of pollinators though. There's a lot of, even though there aren't as many flowers, it looks like flowers took a big hit. What we still have, there's a lot of insects competing for it right now.
Yep.
Not only do we have a few monarchs flying around, there's a few bees. I've seen some bumblebees.
Even some moths over there.
Yeah. All right. So this was pretty interesting. Oh, let's take a look at this before we wrap up. So half of this shrub. What was this one, Bob?
I think this is another mock orange. Oh,
Mock orange. Okay. And it almost looks like you could draw a line down this plant. Green on one side, brown on the other. And then again another tree over here. And it looks like the outer edge of the purple martin meadow is pretty beat up, but the inner looks pretty good. So this is one of the more established gardens. So we were talking that perhaps just the fact that it's been here a few years gives it an advantage. It's survived the weather, it's seen the weather, and it's a little bit downhill, so it has a little bit of cover. But I really think this was a great aftermath tour. We'll call it the aftermath of the storm. And I think it would be really great to come back and do this tour again, like we said, in 2 weeks or maybe a month, and see what happens. And now we've got something that we can begin to track. And I would love to see us put some educational materials about storm-resistant plants and what can happen after a storm and what you can do about it. So, all right, I want to thank everyone. We have lots of people that have been watching, and I want to remind you that on Tuesday, from Tuesday to Friday of this coming week, we'll be doing programs at 11 o'clock. And then this coming Friday, 6:30, we will be doing a very special evening program on reptiles. So some of you may really enjoy turtles. Some may not enjoy snakes very much, but you don't have to see them in person because you can watch them live on camera. So if you would like to tune in, that will be 6:30 this coming Friday. Until Tuesday, this is Ranger Russ signing off from the Meggs Point Nature Center at Hammonasset Beach State Park. Thank you all for watching.